Domestic violence. Domestic violence in California is enabled in the Domestic Violence Protection Act. Unfortunately, people think that domestic violence requires violence. It does not. It really should be called the Domestic Abuse Act. What do I mean by that? That means that in California, if one person perpetrates conduct upon another person which causes them to seriously disturb their peace, they are entitled to a restraining order. That restraining order can restrain them from their home. It can keep them yards away from their other party, their home, and even their children, and even contemporarily deal with their property and support actions. In California, the law is such that if you file a request for a temporary restraining order and you write facts down which would constitute domestic abuse, the court is required to issue a temporary order. And by the way, that also includes what we call coercive control, which was recently added to the Domestic Violence Protection Act 2 years ago. What do we mean by coercive control? If you control your partner's whereabouts, their money, who they see, and their friends, that's also considered to be an act of abuse. That domestic violence petition is filed without notice to the other party. That means you do not know if your partner or your spouse is requesting a domestic violence restraining order. You don't get notice of it until the order is issued and you are served. Once you are served, it frequently requires you to vacate your family home and to stay away from the protected party. The protected party may also include other household members as well as your children. It can also preclude you from even seeing your children until the domestic violence action is heard. California law requires that action, that hearing, to be within 25 days of the date of the issuance of the order. That means for over 3 weeks, you're subject to a restraining order, and if you violate that restraining order, you're in contempt of court. So for example, if a restraining order is issued that precludes you from contacting the protected party, and you even want to call up that party and say, why did you do that? That's a violation of the order. At a hearing, you are entitled to give your side of the story. The consequences of a permanent restraining order are severe. That can require you to stay out of your home. That can have permanent restraining orders on your children. More importantly, if you're involved in a custody dispute, it creates what's called a rebuttable presumption that you are not entitled to legal custody of your children. A presumption in the law says we're going to make this finding unless you establish that it is not true. Presumptions only require 51% of the evidence. That's a very narrow path to navigate. It is very important for you to have competent counsel. It can also require you to be stopped by the TSA because it goes into a national database. It also generally prohibits you from owning a firearm. And it can also, if you're seeking support and you're a party who is seeking support, can disable you from receiving spousal support. Therefore, it is very important when you are served with that, even though you can appear, to have competent counsel defend you against a domestic violence restraining order proceeding.